You feeling stuck lately? Like life's passing you by? Get to know M.A.Y.A.
Acronym, My Ambition, Your Ambition.
Reconnect with your dreams, your goals, your ambitions. Find your motivation and start to live the life you desire. Explore the M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition podcast at MayaAkai.com.
Namaste, everyone. Welcome to episode 33 of M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. As I like to say, I feel that my podcast show likes to embrace salient topics from a fresh and forward-thinking perspective. That's how I like to think I am. And I think sometimes I'm pretty spot on because I get the feedback. So I think I'm doing well with that. But the focus of the podcast is to pull back that veil of self-doubt and self-sabotage that plagues so many of us in our lives that keeps us from really identifying what our true ambitions and how to harness motivation to get to that best version of yourself, to harness happiness. More importantly, every day, not the overarching idea, because the big theme for 2021 is stop thinking broad and big and think smaller about incremental things that lead to larger things. So it's about that everyday best version of yourself. It's happiness every day. You build small and eventually you begin to quantify it. And before you know it, you're like, I am really the person who I want to be right now. I am really happy. That's the whole purpose of M.A.Y.A. Now, if you're a first-time listener, as I always say, buckle up for safety. Not that obviously this isn't a safe space, but occasionally the ride can get bumpy because I may say something in an episode that really kind of makes you think about something that you hadn't considered or brings back a memory, So I always tell people, listen open-mindedly. And if you find something that kind of, startles you, go, wow, I never really saw it that way. And I feel through each episode, people can do that. The key thing about if you're a first-time listener is that you are welcome to work at your own pace. There are 33 episodes. So if you're still back in episode 20, I'm okay with that because maybe that's the episode that really kind of resonated with you and you're doing some more work. If you are a returning listener or viewer, of course, you know what the routine is. Always, I tell everyone, grab pencil, paper, pen, jot down anything that kind of really strikes you in the podcast so that you can go back and revisit it at a later time. Now, of course, let's go ahead and do our housekeeping before we jump into the show. This is episode 33, the emotion and mental cleanse, removing toxicity from your life. I like to see this as being spring cleaning for yourself emotionally and mentally. We think about it's spring, it's time for change, it's renewal. Well, you should think the same way about yourself emotionally and mentally. So each episode is kind of building upon the next. I felt like this one really was a good time to visit it. Now, if you're listening to episodes in the past, that's okay. You can always find episodes of M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition at MayaAkai.com. Remember, with every episode, there is a podcast companion. So you can go to MayaAkai.com, click on the podcast resource tab, and there'll be supplemental information to kind of dig into this conversation and kind of expand it a bit more. I'm hoping by now you have all subscribed to my YouTube channel, MayaAkai. Just, go there, search MayaAkai, as I always say. You're going to get some anime stuff first, and then you're going to find me. And click subscribe to the page. But if you happen to be a person who has a podcast platform of choice, I will not hold that against you. You can always find M.A.Y.A, Your Ambition on iTunes, Google, Amazon, Spotify. I'm on Amazon Audibles now, so there's all kinds of ways that you can listen to the show. And of course, hopefully by now you're getting social with me. And if you're not, these are all call to action things. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Make sure that you're following me on social media. You can find me at Maya_Kai, Instagram and Twitter, and then MayaAkai Presents on Facebook. So make sure you're connecting with me on these different ways to kind of stay abreast of what's going on with the show. And you get to be interactive with the show. That's the whole reason I do this live. So if you actually put a comment on Facebook or YouTube, just like Roburn here, hello, Roburn, always faithful. I love it. I'm going to post your comment on the screen, read it so, people who are listening or not viewing can understand what you said. He said, aloha ma. I think correctly. I think you're in Hawaii, correct? That's why I always get the aloha. And if James O'Bannon, our DC via Detroit connection, thank you for tuning in. So just like them, you weigh in on the show, give me a comment, and I will share it with the listening and viewer audience. Okay, before we jump into episode 33, the emotional and mental cleanse, removing toxicity from your life. You know what we have to do before we can do that. We got to bring on Miriam McQueen. She is the M.A.Y.A musical muse on the show. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. So I thought about you because the Grammys passed along. And I'm like,
yeah,
I wonder what Miriam thinks about the Grammys. And because you're an artist, but you're also a young individual. So yeah. I don't watch the Grammys anymore. I'm just not drawn to them. Like as a kid, that was like something we did in the house together.
Yeah.
I've been disinterested probably for like the last 5 or 6 years. How about you? What was your thoughts on the Grammys?
I have two. I just wish they would incorporate more artists instead of the same artists over and over again. I know there are a few new ones that trickle in every year, but I think it would be better to show like the true side of the music industry. Throw some songwriters in there that you've never heard of, some artists that are doing well for themselves, but just aren't a popular name. And that's what I would love to see from the Grammys, but I haven't watched it in a while just because it's kind of the same thing over and over again. And to me, there's not really a point. So,
Does it feel like it's turned into a popularity contest? And I understand it's driven by Billboard numbers, like
yeah,
who's hot on the Billboard, charts and things like that. But does it feel like more of a popularity contest than really about true talent? I guess that's an arbitrary word when I say talent. I do understand that.
It does. It does feel like that. Not saying that they're not talented, because the people that are there are very talented individuals. I just wish there was more representation all around. And I know it's a political thing. So I think it would be hard for the Grammys to do something other than what they do. But I think they should, because to me, it just gets boring every year seeing the same thing over and over again. So,
and that's refreshing to hear, because I kind of felt like there was once upon a time Grammys that were for me, which means artists I like, music that I was into, and time moves on. So I realized those artists are no longer popular, hence I'm not connecting. I'm the person who's on Sirius XM still listening to the 80s and 90s channel.
Yeah, I love the 80s.
So yeah, how much I haven't moved on. And then my only real shift is Pitbull Radio. Oh, that's like my favorite. But I'm really 70s, 80s, and 90s, and I don't really get into the newer stuff. So
well, I'm a fan of mainstream music. Like, I do love all the songs that are out there. I just think that more music and more artists need to be shown.
I think I agree, because there's a lot of talented and different types of music out there. Also, I see we are prepared for spring. Since I said spring cleaning, emotionally and mentally is the topic. I see we had a change in our appearance.
We've got hair.
Yes. Was this just, I want something different and you just went for it?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Anytime I do something with my hair, I get bored with wherever it's at, and I need something different. So that's what happened. Well, impulsivity, I guess, but
it's okay. I like it. I like it. Good to see. Hey, I always like when people are willing to take risk in hair. It's not like you can't get more of it.
Yeah, well, see, I've never been a risk taker with my hair. So that's why, like, when I went blonde, it was kind of a big deal for me, because I've never done anything to like damage it too bad.
Okay.
And so then when I did that, I was just like, well, I'm already here, so I might as well keep going.
There you go. Well, I'm sure there's more where that came from, so you'll be okay.
Yeah,
all right. We will see you on the back end of the show, and you're performing live today. So we've had a lot of your originals, and you're putting something out there that I've only heard like one time. So I'm looking forward to kind of hearing you perform it. All right, we'll see you on the back end of the show. All right, everybody, that is Miriam McQueen. She is the M.A.Y.A musical muse. Make sure you follow Miriam on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. It's pretty straightforward. It's Miriam McQueen. You can go to her website, miriammcqueen.com, for her original music. You can. She has her current 5-song EP out, Heart of Gold. We've featured all the songs here on the show, so you can find that in iTunes, Google, Spotify, any place they sell music, you can find Miriam McQueen. Support an independent artist. It usually only costs you like 99 cents a song. So you know what? Go ahead and support an independent artist. Okay, so let's jump into episode 33. And I'm really going to enjoy doing this. So make sure you've got your beverage of choice. For me, I'm doing a blend of herbal teas today. Decided to still do caffeine, but not as much as I get in my coffee. So whatever your beverage of choice is, grab it. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, so you're free to have a glass of wine or something else. Like I said, grab a pencil and paper, because I think I might say some things you're going to want to jump down in this episode, and find that space where you can really take the next 40 minutes and focus on you. Because Maya, my ambition, your ambition, is all about getting to that best version of you. This is the one time you can say somebody is legitimately interested in helping me to try to get to where I'm trying to be. I'm working on me, and while I'm working on me, I'm sharing with people, and you can be working on you. So let's jump into episode 33. The emotional and mental cleanse, removing toxicity from your life. I said, this is your emotional and mental spring cleaning episode. Something that I think is really appropriate right now for a lot of people because they don't think about kind of doing a spring cleaning for themselves. People think about houses, getting rid of, things from over the winter, but they never think about taking stock in themselves in spring cleaning, renewal. I think because the new year just rolled around and people have resolutions that they don't live up to. By now, either you have stuck with your New Year's resolutions or you have not. So now is a chance to say, let me rethink what I thought I wanted to change, revisit it, and maybe put some new things out there that I can really do, that I can really focus on. But I think key to knowing that is doing an inventory about what's going on in your life right now. And if there's anything toxic, then you need to remove it, because trying to work through toxicity makes absolutely no sense. This meme kind of says it all, and I love it. Toxic people will pollute everything around them. Don't hesitate, fumigate. I'm going to say it one more time. Toxic people will pollute everything around them. And I talk about people and situations through this episode. Situations encompass people. So either way, just keep that in mind. But toxic people will pollute everything around them. Don't hesitate to fumigate. So with that being said, let's jump into talking about toxicity and how you can change it for yourself. What's the first thing we do every time episode? Toolbox time, put your toolbox on the table. What's the first thing you're taking out so you can be using? You're going to be using your emotional intelligence. What's by now is your number one tool in your toolbox. You should be using it 24/7. The only time I'll excuse you from not using it is when you're sleeping. That's the only time. But when you're interacting with people, you should always have your EI somewhere out there. Remember, EI is your ability to perceive, control, and evaluate emotions. Your emotions as well as others. But it's first important that you understand you before you try to figure out somebody else. See, that's the biggest rule in M.A.Y.A. Yes, we do talk about people outside of ourselves, but the key relationship we're building here is the relationship with you. Because when you see where you need work, where you see you have deficits, where you see you have weakness, emotionally and mentally, when you start working on those things, you may think or see the world in a different perspective. And that's what we're working on here. And EI is the thing that will legitimately help you to get past that point. So let's jump into why we accept toxic people or situations into our lives. And I know someone's going, well, I don't know. Well, there's three things when I was working on this podcast that I kept in perspective in saying this. There's three things I want you to think about. One, do you realize there are toxic people and situations in your life? Because sometimes we're remiss from things, can't see the forest for the trees. Sometimes we're remiss from seeing something that's in plain sight for different reasons. So the first thing is, do you realize you're dealing with a toxic person or in a toxic relationship, whether it be work, family, romantic relationship? Do you realize there's something about it that's toxic? Two, do you feel that though you know something is toxic with a person or situation, that you have to accept it? This is one of the number one things I see people struggling with. They feel because it's family, they have to deal with toxicity. They feel it's my job, I have to deal with the toxicity. They feel like there's no options for them to navigate around it. So they're aware of what's in front of them, what's happening. They've just relinquished the control and they're accepting the situation. This is when you get back to some of the other episodes about self-advocacy, about the art of communication, and about taking back your power. When you start to really dig into those episodes, this conversation, especially the second part about why do we accept toxic people and situations into our life, you will find it easier to navigate these waters, so to speak. And the third thing I would tell you to think about in this is a lot of people have come to accept toxicity or negativity in their lives, and they've normalized it. You often see this with people who have experienced trauma. They've got so accustomed to it being part of their life, they assume it rightfully belongs there. So they tolerate it. So they know it's there, but there's maybe a hopeless, helpless feeling that the situation or the tide cannot turn, or they feel that they're just not in the position to make the change. Sometimes people feel to make the change is going to be too much heavy lifting and too much work. And I'll be honest, a lot of people, when it comes to change, especially when the challenge part steps in, they don't want to do the heavy lifting. They want someone else to do it for them. They want to assist somebody else in making the changes in their lives, opposed to, no, you're going to do the work and I'm going to assist you instead. And I'm not going to do the heavy lifting for you. I'm here to make sure you have the support that you need to be able to do these things and to make sure you know you're not standing alone in that journey. Some of the hardest and most difficult people to work with, especially in a therapeutic setting, are people who are looking for the answers in others. And I always tell people the answer is always inside of you. The scary thing is sometimes you may not lock what the answer is to the question that you're posing to yourself. That's where people often struggle and will accept toxicity. So, as I mentioned, there's 3 things I want you to think about why you accept toxicity, toxic people and situations in your life. It's either 1, you don't realize it's happening. 2, you realize it's happening, but you really feel like it's out of your control because of the relationship dynamic you're in. You feel like it'll make somebody else uncomfortable. It'll create conflict. And in some cases with some people, they have now normalized toxic and negative people in their life because that's just all they've ever known. They've never seen the silver lining of the other side of negativity, which is positive. So hence they keep functioning in a place that's not healthy emotionally and mentally. So they are exactly existing in toxicity. I will tell you this about things being toxic. Would you walk into a room and know that the air in the room is toxic? If someone was to say, oh, you can't go in, that room's contaminated, you would have to go in with, a hazmat suit or a face mask because it's not safe for you physically, it would compromise your health. What do you think people will do? If they had to go into the room, they will put on the hazmat suit and the mask to be able to do whatever they have to do in the room. Or if the choice was given to them to not enter the room at all, they would not. What is interesting about emotional and mental toxicity, people willingly participate in it knowing there are consequences. And that's the part that baffles a lot of people. Like, why do you keep doing that? It's like the definition of insanity. Keep doing the same thing, expecting a different outcome, but yet every time it's the same outcome. So it's interesting when it comes to our physical health, people will move forward with far more diligence and better decision making than when it comes to their emotional or mental health. People don't like talking about mental health or mental wellness because it makes them have to visit things that make them uncomfortable. Nobody wants to talk about mental health or mental wellness until they're in crisis. And that's a part for me. I look at people and say the whole point of my ambition, your ambition, is to help you put things in place that you're ready to weather the storm when it shows up. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to do it, without any issues or problems, but you're a bit more prepared mentally and emotionally to navigate where you're at in your life. That's the key thing. If I could get more people to think about this, I tell people, I wish there was a way that I could wrap mental wellness in like twerking or something that's totally like awestruck because everybody would be involved. Seriously, but I can't. And it's real life. And the thing is, you've had people for the last year who have been struggling with their mental wellness because the 3 things they've been used to in their life, they totally had to give up: comfort, convenience, and control. And they've struggled with it. For those of us that are forward thinking and can meet a change, because what's the rule? You can't spell challenge without change. And I'm going to keep pushing that. That's one of those things for me, mantra-wise, I think is so important for people to understand. You can't spell challenge without change. And that subtle difference in challenge and change is LLE. You plug that in the middle of the word change, and that stands for look, listen, evaluate, and then execute. It's that simple. If we could change our mindsets and stop thinking that something that challenges you or something that requires some form of change was negative, you'd probably navigate those waters a little better than what you do. But we live in a society that when you have to get outside your comfort zone, people are instantly looking for the negativity. Like, how is this inconveniencing me? I don't want to do this because I'm not used to it. The comfort zone was another episode that really helps you to understand how stepping outside your comfort zone can be the very thing that will help you to grow, change, and take your life to that next level. Because once you stop being comfortable, it's either going to make you a little nervous about it or it's going to make you want to execute and do something different to get to a different place. And toxicity, negative people, toxic people are often in so many people's lives. So we talked about why we often accept toxic people or situations. 1, you may not know. 2, you know, but you feel like you can't really do anything about it. Or 3, it's all you know. So the idea of something different is just not even a reality for you. You've accepted, you've resigned yourself to believing that your life is just going to be what it is, bad. Those are the 3 reasons that people will tend to navigate these waters opposed to trying to get back to land and shore and stability. So let's talk about the different types of toxic people that exist. And this is something that's really interesting to me because I think it's so key to be able to really identify this. And mind you, this is 7 types of people, but in essence, even more has been identified. Like I've seen something up to 10, 12 types of toxic people. I think a lot of them are kind of blended or been pulled apart. So it doesn't matter how many types of toxic people, it's understanding the key point of what a toxic person looks like. Now, I want you to listen to these descriptions. And though you might be thinking of other toxic people that may be in your life, I want you to think about, does any of this apply to you? Because that might be the big discovery piece today. And I can tell you, there was one I said, I don't think I'm toxic, but I feel like that scenario has happened to me before. And I feel like I was a person that was kind of pushing that cart and putting all the bad stuff in it. Seriously. But we'll get to that in a bit. So let's talk about the 7 types of toxic people. One of the first ones, and there's no order of importance of this, by the way. You have that person who is deemed to be the conversational narcissist. It's someone who keeps interrupting you when you're having a conversation, won't let you get a word in. They love to talk about themselves or just hear themselves talk. Now, there are some people who love to talk, and sometimes they lose sight of the fact that they may be kind of limiting other people's kind of ability to participate in the conversation. So everybody maliciously doesn't set out to do this. But you're looking for a person, and I'm going to tell you how I just realized that I was dealing with a conversational narcissist, really. I was in a relationship that ended, and I started to notice that in conversations, whenever it was about that person, when it was about him, we had full-blown conversations. What was going on at work? What was going on with his kids? What was going on with his parents? Full-blown conversation. I started to notice anytime I brought up anything about me, like I talk about work, it'd be like 1 or 2 answers, and we'd move on to talking about him. I would notice I was talking about a project I was working on. I'd be like, oh, let me tell you about this project. Something really exciting happened. I'd say it, and he wouldn't ask any questions. He had no interest in engaging in what I was experiencing, positive and negative. I only noticed the one time he engaged me in relevant conversation was at my weakest moment when I had a really bad experience and he was actually there for me. I also came to pick up, he was okay with when Maya was weak, but he was clearly not okay with when Maya was on her feet, strong, and moving forward. There was a conflict in the kind of person that he was okay with. But I realized I was dealing with a conversational narcissist. And it really became like front and center for me. Like we would talk about stuff and I kind of start making a mental note of it. Like, oh, how was work today? We both asked each other the same question. And I'd say, oh, I had this situation, that this, and this. No questions, nothing. How was work for you? Long, elaborate story. I'd ask questions, actually be engaging, actually behaving if I was interested. How you can deem that a person is not a conversationalist narcissist is when you do engage them in conversation, they will kind of, when you can get a word in edgewise, they will start to ask you questions like, really, what happened with this? But a person who is not a narcissist that way has no real interest in anything you're saying, and they kind of want to end your part of the conversation pretty quickly. So that's how you concern that somebody just talks a lot versus somebody who wants to control the conversation and it's all about them and they could care less about somebody else. So I want to make sure that people don't go, oh my God, so-and-so is a conversational narcissist. Not necessarily. You got to be mindful of how they engage you. Do they actually have a conversation with you when you're talking about you? Or do you immediately exit that conversation and it goes right back to them? That's how you can tell the difference. Another type of toxic person is called the straitjacket. And this is someone who wants to control everything and everyone around them. They want to be in charge of what you do, of what they do, of what you say, and even what you think. They want to make sure you are fully in line with their way of thinking. Having your own independent thought or feelings doesn't work for them. That's an interesting person to deal with. And I think this might be the easiest one for people to identify. Like, oh, yeah, because if I at one moment say I feel this way about something and it doesn't line up with how that person felt, then they instantly got upset or, as we like to say, in their feelings about it. So that's an interesting thing if you're dealing with somebody who is the straitjacket type toxic person. Another type, the third type, would be the emotional moocher. We also kind of call them spiritual vampires because they tend to suck the positivity like right out of you. They bleed you emotionally dry. These are the people that you feel like they just drain you when you're in a conversation or interacting with them. It's always their conversation, their interactions. It's always sad, negative, or they're pessimistic about everything they talk about. So there's never anything positive. It's like they just suck the life out of you, literally. Have you ever dealt with a person and you said, every time I talk to so-and-so, I just feel drained at the end of the conversation. And like you get to the point where you don't even want to deal with them because you just know what's coming because it's a reoccurring pattern of behavior with them. Then you've got the drama magnet. It's that person that something is always wrong. They're kind of like, this is like that extension of like a spiritual vampire, an emotional moocher. It's always, of course, a problem. Once it's solved, another one emerges like right after it. So they're like always a person who's in crisis, like all the time. One thing happens, and the next time you talk to them, like a day or two later, it's something else happened. They only want empathy from you, sympathy, and support, but they never really want to get advice from you. They never want your input about what's going on in their situation to correct it or make it better. They just want you to be there to coddle them. They're not looking to make a change to make their situation better, only for you to stand in their corner and say, okay, really? Oh, that's so unfortunate. God forbid if you ever said, have you ever considered? Because now they feel like you're not in their corner. You're not giving them support. They just want that listening ear. And don't get me wrong. There are times in relationships that being a listening ear is what a person needs. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that person that has a revolving door of problems constantly, and you're starting to see a pattern in behavior of perhaps where their problems are emerging from and how they're handling them. So different. So don't think that there's anything wrong with ever being present with someone in the moment and just listening to them. But if you're having to do that repeatedly because they're always in crisis, there's something not exactly lining up with what and how they're living their lives. So the drama magnet, there's always drama around. There's always something happening. They always have a conflict with somebody. You know, it's interesting. You ever meet that person that everywhere they go, somebody doesn't like them? They always have an issue with somebody at work. And one day I said to somebody, you know, I'm frequently in the doghouse as a friend because I'm to the point where I'll just tell people what I think. And I'm like, look, I'm not saying this to be mean. I'm just giving you an observation because I kind of noticed a pattern here. But I said, why is it that at your job, you always have some situation or issue with people, like all the time? I said, what's going on with the culture there? How are you interacting with people? Like, what's going on? And they just looked at me blankly. And I think they felt offended, like I was saying it was their fault. And then I saw the look on their face and I'm like, I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm just asking, like, what is up with your work culture that you keep having conflicts with people? It's like you've had 3 different managers and you've had an issue with every single one of your managers. What's going on? Like, are they bringing in a certain kind of person? And then I kind of had to soften it a bit because, like I said, they were starting to feel kind of defensive. That probably wasn't my best delivery. But at that point, I'm several years into this conversation with that person. So the drama magnet's interesting to me. There's always something going on. This might be my favorite one, the JJ. Love the JJ. JJ stands for jealous and judgmental person. It's someone who has so much self-hate. Seriously, they just do not like themselves. They can't be happy for anybody else. So if I'm not happy, I can't imagine seeing anybody else be happy. But to be honest, that's actually kind of rational. If somebody's sitting in a position where they are just literally emotionally and mentally disjointed and not happy, how would you ever expect for that person to be able to look at someone else and see happiness for them if they haven't experienced for them? The negativity is they're sitting in it. So to be honest, the JJ actually makes a lot of sense because they're reflecting out how they feel. So they're not going to find goodness and kindness and have empathy for others where they themselves are sitting in a position where they're just not happy. And they often hate themselves or hate their situations. They're judgmental. They're often critical and very gossip-like. Everyone's awful. And they lack seeing anything good in anything or anyone. And that's the worst kind of person to be around because it's like, wow, like your negativity is just like you can't find happiness in anything. And if one small inkling of happiness comes their way, they find a way to put a storm cloud over it to make it go away. Like, oh, that person's just being like this because of this. They just instantly look to discredit somebody else's success or happiness because often they are not happy people. So the JJ, we probably all know some JJs in our life. The question is, have we ever been a JJ? I'm sure at some point in our life, we might have been that person in a moment. The thing is about frequency with all this. The thing about being a toxic person or situation, the underlying thing to this is about the frequency of the behavior. If they're like this all the time, they're a toxic person. If it's more situationally based, then I would tell you, judge it in that vacuum of what it is. If it doesn't mirror who they are, if what you're seeing in this toxic moment isn't congruent with what you know them to be, mind you, not who you're giving them credit for. They are a good person on the surface. They show you they're a good person. People got to stop confusing that so-and-so is really a good person. If you say but, now we got a problem. Just saying. I'm keeping that real, keeping it 100 on that. Another type of toxic person is the fibber. Liars, fibbers, people who exaggerate things. The problem is their dishonesty drains you because you're constantly doubting their words and you don't know if they're trustworthy. So they say something and you're like, I don't trust them worth a grain of salt. Or you're questioning if what they say is valid, especially if it involves dealing with other people or another situation. Because they've said something to you, you're like, I can't just assume. I'm sure we've all been in this situation. The person who you would call the fibber brings a situation to you that happened with somebody. I think in friendships, we've all experienced this. So-and-so did this to me, and they only tell you their side of the story. And they tend to embellish things or exaggerate. So they want you to instantly be in their corner and be on their side, because remember, it's about support and empathy. But you're sitting here saying, I need to ask some questions because I just can't go out there full throttle, assuming that you were just honest with me, and now I look like an idiot because I should know I got to think about what you're telling me. These are difficult people to work with because there may be times where, they're honest, but when you start to question everything because you had enough situations with this individual to know they're not exactly as honest as you need for them to be, you're right to question that and you're right to respond accordingly. So if they bring something to you, before you act on it, you need to step back, ask some questions, and if it requires for you to deal with another person, then you should approach that other person differently, just not like based on what you heard was fact, because it could very well be fiction. And a final type of toxic person is the tank. The tank crushes everything in its path. It's like a human tank. They're always right. They don't take anyone else's feelings into consideration or their ideas. They constantly put themselves first and expect for everybody else just to fall in line. You may know someone who has one of these traits, two of these traits, and like I said, ask the question, have you ever been guilty of it? Which takes us to real talk time number 1. And this show, we're not going to have too many. Like last week, we were loaded with tool times and real talk times. But this time, we only have a couple. But this is the real talk that I think is important when you're trying to discern about toxicity in your life. Ask yourself this question. Did you find yourself thinking, I know someone like this, or hell, I feel I've been this way at times? That's a big question to ask. And I can tell you, there's times I'm like thinking, I think I had a situation where I might have behaved that way, not because I was trying to be a toxic person, but this is before I had better emotional intelligence and I just reacted opposed to responded to how I felt. Now, we've had a real talk time moment. Let's have a toolbox moment because I think it's important to take some things in consideration. This is where you should take objectivity versus subjectivity out of your toolbox. So now we got a couple things on the table, and these are things that I generally think you should have on the table consistently when you are working with people. Here's a thing I want you to keep in mind when you are talking about objective versus subjectivity. Remember, objective means you see things outside of yourself. Subjectivity means you're bringing it from your perspective, your emotions, your feeling, not necessarily rooted in fact. That's the difference between the two. Object is going to be rooted in fact. Subject is going to be rooted in how you feel, which may not be fact. Just know the two differences. Ask yourself this question. If somebody is toxic in your life, because this is where accountability and responsibility is kind of huge. Have you placed a person or have you been placed yourself in a situation where it was decided it was necessary to be a toxic person? Now, I think when I put that out there on the table, I should probably give an example. Let's go back to something like the fibber, a person who lies, exaggerates, things of that nature. And like I said, you're asking yourself this question, have you placed a person in this position or have you been placed in this position? Here's how a fibber could come into being without it even being an intention. 1, you are dealing with somebody that doesn't do well with honesty and the truth. They're really sensitive. They take everything personal, and their emotional intelligence is low as all get out. And you know something has happened, and if you fully just be honest about it, it's gonna cause a problem. So you find a way to weave. What a tangled web we weave, okay? We weave something to tell them that it still might give you some pushback, but it's not as difficult and it's a lot more palatable than if you just straight out tell them the truth. Fibbing, hence the fibber, okay? On the flip side, before you had this evolution of having better emotional intelligence, have you put somebody in that position where they felt like if they were honest, now mind you, don't let somebody's irresponsibility, don't be accountable for it if you didn't do it. But have you ever put somebody in that space where they felt like if they were honest with you, that there was going to be a bigger problem or you just weren't going to be receptive of the truth? I'll be honest, nobody is really receptive of the truth. You like, I always say there's a reason why people lie. The truth hurts. Real talk. But as you get better emotional intelligence, you get better perspective and your perception may be different. By the way, that's another episode, just saying. These have all been, very cumulative of getting to these conversations. So I would ask you, if you feel you've ever been guilty of being any of these people, think about who you were dealing with in the situation and did it elicit that type of response from you, reacting? Because remember, we're about responding, not reacting. And this is where your emotional intelligence puts you in that position to make better decisions. So I just kind of want that toolbox time out there to say, hey, are you putting people in a position when they feel like they can't really be authentic or honest with you in situations because of how you respond? Are you a hothead? Do you instantly go on the defense when somebody says something you don't like? These are all things to consider. But I'm feeling like as you're on this journey with Maya, my ambition, your EI is raising. And you're doing better at responding to people and not react. And what did I tell you can be the number one thing you can practice, especially if you are a hothead? The minute you feel that physiological response that you're about to pop off, seriously, you get warm. We know when we're about to get mad. We get warm. We get kind of fidgety. That anxiety kind of creeps up. The minute you feel that coming, that is the ring the alarm. Somebody's about to snap off. Here's what you do. You say, you know something? I got to put me in timeout because this situation is really impacting me in a way that I need to really step back for a bit because I don't want us to start arguing and I don't want to say something that I got to go back and clean up later just because I'm really upset or angry. So I hope you respect the fact that I need to exit right now to get myself mentally and emotionally together. I'll be back. And go. If you have a person who struggles with that and can't respect that you're trying to control your emotions better, you're evaluating, perceiving what's happening, then you know what? That might be a person you might want to say, maybe this is not the right situation for me to be in. If you can't respect me telling you that I need to step back because what's unfolding in front of me is about to elicit the wrong reaction and I want to respond to you opposed to react. So I don't have to go back and do cleanup because, I was in aisle 9 and just knocked everything off the shelves because you know what? I got in my feelings. That's a big part of EI. You sense your triggers, you know when one's been flipped, and you decide to remove yourself from the situation before you do something you've come to regret. How many times have you said something out of anger that you regret? And I'm going to tell you something. In the minute when you said it, you meant it. You may not have meant it when you reflected like that was really low, below the belt, what I said. But now you've hurt someone's feelings because you had poor emotional intelligence. You didn't stop. You didn't remove yourself from the situation before you did damage. We have no issue creating emotional and mental collateral damage with people. That's a whole nother episode within itself. And I always tell people, I really work hard not to create collateral damage with people. And sometimes in choosing to not be that way, it means I have to absorb maybe some of the pain. It might mean that, you know what, I may truly care about you, but this is not the right situation for me to be in. We should probably go our separate ways. And that may hurt you because it might be someone that you truly care about. It could be a family situation that you need to put somebody in timeout because interacting with them causes too much depression, anxiety, stress, unhealthy things. Spring cleaning means you start looking at stuff that's sitting around that isn't doing you any good. And whether you're related to somebody or not, it doesn't mean they have a right to emotionally or mentally abuse you. And so often because we are related to people, we assume it's okay to give them this caveat to act out. You a lie and the truth ain't in you, as my grandmother would say. May she rest in peace. Not doing it. I have no problem releasing things that are toxic. Let's have our second toolbox moment. Two toolbox moment back to back. And this is one This is the nugget I would say write down, because this is the one I think that you can apply to everything and will give some interesting insight about toxic people, toxic situations, and overall dealing with people and your decision making about yourself and others. Now, we all know about the 80-20 rule mostly. So, a rough description of it, it's based on something called the Pareto principle that states for many events, roughly 80% of the effect, i.e. the outcome, is from 20% of the cause. Now, a simple way to put this in perspective would be this. And I want you to sit there for a bit. So if you have your beverage of choice, take a sip. I'm gonna drink a sip of my blended herbal tea here, because I want this to sit for a minute, because it's scrolling along the screen. If you're watching, I'll read it again if you're just listening. So the 80-20 rule, also called the Pareto principle, it states that for most situations, events, that roughly 80% of the effect, so the outcome, comes from 20% of the cause. Now, when you think about that, how many times can you say to yourself, you know something? I know that the outcome of this situation is going to be drastic. I know it is. Or how many times has the outcome to you was so unexpected, you didn't know that it was going to be at that level. It was going to be the kind of fallout that happened. So the reason why it's so important to really think about the 80-20 rule is make decisions that are well thought out, and don't just react to things. Use your emotional intelligence. This can help you make better decisions. And it also means when you're thinking of a situation, which you have to do, you're kind of thinking of what could be the outcomes. Now, mind you, you can't often think of every outcome, but I tend to think if you know the people you're dealing with, or if you're very aware of the situation you're in, you tend to have a good idea of what's going to happen. Have you ever done something and you've said, I'm about to do this and I know it's about to piss a whole bunch of people off. I'm going to do it anyways. Okay. Now, mind you, it depends on what that situation is. If you're doing something because you're being selfish and it's going to actually affect other people in a negative way, shame on you for being selfish. But if you're doing something because it's selfless, it's a required thing that you must do because it's about your overall mental health stability, that emotional and mental space that you're in that's going to be better for you. Every decision we make cannot have an outcome that's going to be best for everyone. We're not talking about doing mortal harm to people. That's my thing. And you can also let a person know, I'm about to make a decision that you're probably not going to like. So before you even move forward with something, if you have a good relationship with somebody, hopefully you can talk to them about what the situation is before you then do something and now the outcome is there. Because some people's like, I'll just do this and I'll deal with that later. And the fallout is way worse than they thought, because it's usually insincere and inconsiderate of other people's feelings and thoughts. Now, you can't keep everybody's feelings and thoughts always in front of you, especially if you're having to make a decision. For instance, I think this is one that people can connect with. We often have toxic people in our family. Seriously. And there's no secret. You've identified them. When this person steps into the situation, there's always a problem. It always causes me stress. It really has an adverse effect on me. And they're often acting in a vein of selfishness for themselves. People struggle with the idea of cutting that tie because they're related to them. But yet, they've watched repeatedly this person within their 80-20 dynamic do whatever they want and not care about the fallout. So if you're dealing with somebody who you feel legitimately doesn't care about how you feel, to continue to interact with them is a unhealthy thing to do. So here's what you got to do with family. And I know, everybody doesn't have that ability just to cut things loose. Somehow I think that might have been one of my little small gifts, like just cutting things going like, oh, okay, oh, all right. I have a peace of mind now, so I'm going to miss you, but, maybe we can revisit this some other time. When you decide to let toxic people go in your life, whether it's a family member, whether it is a romantic interest, it could be your kids. I know people struggle with that. I know some people who have got kids that will be on 10, like adult kids. Curse them out, disrespect them in their face, disrespect them other people. And I've been present front and center and had to bite my tongue because it was none of my business. I was like, oh my goodness, Lord have mercy, please keep me near the cross. Because I'm struggling with this when I'm watching it, and I just kind of move away. And I'm looking at them, and a part of it, I think they wanted me to swoop in and rescue them. I was like, Not my monkeys, not my circus. So with that being said, we talked about it. And I said, the reason that your daughter talks to you like that is because you have co-signed on that her entire life. Not only has she disrespected you alone, she just sat in front of a room full of people who are not family and strangers and just talked to you like you were a stray dog, like not her mother. I said, but you know what? I know you want to sit here and cry about this, but I'm not doing this with you because you know what? We've had this conversation multiple times about you have to decide if you're going to allow this relationship to go, then just accept it and don't cry me a river because you're allowing it to happen. Because you feel there's a greater cost at losing her than having any type of happiness. Because you feel like if she doesn't talk to you now, you can't see your grandchildren and now you feel isolated. So you rather be abused than be true to yourself. I said, that's a conscious choice. I said, but maybe if you had the courage to step up and talk to her about, I'm gonna tell you something. We can disagree on stuff and you're entitled to your opinion, but I don't know why you think you're going to talk to me like that. I've never disrespected you like that in front of anybody, and I will not accept this. And I would get her dead smack in the middle of her conversation when people were around. I'd be like, when you know how to talk to me, we can talk. I said, but you've never held her feet to the flame. And she knows she's in control. She knows the 20% of what she does. She knows exactly what the 80% is, but she knows she has nothing to lose. And when people know they have nothing to lose in a relationship with you, unless you find a person that's truly, authentically a good person, they tend to abuse that power. The 80-20 rule. Think about your actions and if the outcome is always going to be magnified bigger than what the action ever was. And that same rule often applies to success, by the way, too. You do something small and the outcome is much larger and it kind of has a domino effect where more positive things happen. So the 80-20 rule is not just rooted in negativity. It's not. It also can have the same concept with positive things. But I'm just saying, when you think about your decision you're making with people, especially about your own emotional and mental wellness, just keep in mind, when I do this, what's going to be the outcome? And the next question you should ask yourself about the outcome is, can I deal with it? Do I have the mental resolve that if I call somebody's bluff and they give it back to me, can I deal with it? Or am I going to fall apart and be in a worse space? Am I prepared to do that? Have I done the emotional and mental work to really stand up for myself? Am I really willing to be that self-advocate I need to be? And if you haven't done the work and you're not ready, then you know what? Don't step over lines that you're not ready to cross. I tell you all the time, it takes work to be able to become that self-advocate, to be able to find that inner voice, to take back your power. And it can be liberating. But I always tell people it will come with a cost because everybody's not going to embrace the fact that you're no longer somebody's punching bag, that you're like, enough is enough, because they don't value you the way you probably value them. Just keep that in mind. This kind of work, this is heavy lifting and it's difficult. So let's talk about, we've gotten through our toolbox times. Let's talk about ways to respond, to not react to toxic people. Because I think it's important to, if we're going to talk about this, and you find yourself in the midst of it, I at least want to give you some tools, some additional tools to put into your toolbox of, now that I am doing an evaluation piece of who's toxic in my life that I may have to remove, let's kind of start giving you some tools of how to start that evaluation process and what to do. So a key thing that I want you to always think about is that you want to avoid playing into their reality. Some people have a tendency to see themselves as a victim in every situation. They don't have any accountability for their actions. They take no responsibility for how they might have put something into motion. All they see is 20 over here, that 80, that's clearly a result of their actions. They are not willing to own it. If you're dealing with a person that's constantly a victim and they're not owning it, you have a problem. Because remember, what's the rule about emotional intelligence? People cannot always meet you where you're at because that's not where they are. So I love when people say, meet me where I'm at. Well, one, I don't know exactly where that is. And two, I'm not sure if that's where I actually want to be. And I need to evaluate those things first. So just know, people can't always meet you where you're at because that's not where they are. And they may not want to be there with you. Everybody's in a different place in regards to their emotional intelligence journey. Just know that. So if you're dealing with somebody who always plays the victim card, you got an uphill battle because it's going to be hard because they may not be able to see things from somebody else's perspective. So here's what your interaction needs to be with someone who's like that. Try to provide another perspective, but don't be critical. Discuss things in facts. So when they start the victim role, like, oh my God, at work, this happened to me, and it's like about me, and they did this to me, and you're kind of seeing there that there could be something more, say, hey, can I ask you a question? You mentioned this, and I'm just kind of processing what you're saying. Did you say this? And did you say that? And kind of throw facts back out them from a different perspective to see, like, have you ever thought maybe they misunderstood you and this was the situation? And maybe they might be able to be there with you, but I wouldn't bank on it. But when you decide to engage people in these conversations, just know, don't be critical and discuss things in facts. Don't get drawn into people's toxic behavior, because it can be exhausting, and oftenly they complain about others and unfair treatment and feeling wronged. So don't jump into the bandwagon with them and co-sign, especially if you know that this is a repeated behavior. It's that, emotional moocher, that person that's always a victim. Your interaction with someone like that needs to be resist the urge to, like I said, jump in their complaining train with them, or to defend them against accusations. Instead, respond with a simple, I'm sorry you feel that way, and leave it at that. Especially if the situation involves you and you don't agree with them, opposed to engaging in the argument. Just say, I'm sorry you feel that way. I didn't realize that. You've given me something to think about. Now, mind you, people with poor emotional intelligence, that's going to eat them, because most people like to argue. So when you say, I got to think about that, because I didn't see it that way. I really didn't. But let's revisit this another time. For most people, they're going to struggle with that because they're going to want to engage you in something to make themselves feel better. Pay attention to how they make you feel. Simply becoming aware of how toxic behavior affects you can help you better respond to it. So pretty much your reaction is, you can have empathy, you can be mindful about being sympathetic. Being empathetic is different than sympathetic. But don't excuse or accept people's poor behavior because of their personal struggles. Once you identify and it's been decided, deal with it properly. So sometimes people play that victim role, like, well, I feel like I get to be rude to you, disrespectful to you. I haven't resolved my daddy issues. I haven't resolved my mama issues. So now I want to take it out on you. No, you're not to be their punching bag. Maybe you can be a sounding board. They tell you how you feel and you can share something back, but never should it be abusive, and you should never have to deal with other people's abuse. And 4, talk to them about their behavior. If they're perpetrators of toxic behavior, they may not realize it, and they may not realize how their behavior affects other people. A lot of people live in a silo. They have no idea about their poor behavior. So your interaction is to start a conversation about what you're experiencing with that person, but be sure to set boundaries and use I statement. Say, hey, this situation happened. And mind you, this is just my perspective. But when that happened, I felt like this. No we, no us, I. Say, this is me. This is how I felt. That's a key thing. And lastly, don't be afraid to put yourself first. You might value a relationship with a person, but don't offer at a risk of your own well-being. And sometimes people are always willing to be self-sacrificing for something that's never really healthy. So your interaction with that is observe and strike and maintain the balance in a healthy relationship, because it should involve give and take. If you offer support, you should receive it back. And if you find you're never getting it back, and you may not even need it that often, that's a red flag that person really is very, very self-centered. So what's the final thoughts on this? Here's things I just want you to learn as you're trying to evaluate toxic people and behaviors. If you notice there's shared behavior in toxic people and situations. 1, they tend to be self-absorbed or self-centered. 2, they tend to be manipulative or have other emotional abusive things they do. Often they're dishonest and there's deceit involved. And they have a difficulty offering compassion to others. Like, they don't have empathy. They can never see someone else's kind of point of view. And there's a tendency to always create drama and conflict. If you see any of these things frequently happening within your relationship with others, you need to figure out where that toxicity is coming from. But the most important evaluation piece of that is it something that actually can be repaired? Can it be fixed? And if you come to the conclusion that there's greater harm to you by trying to maintain an unhealthy relationship with somebody that you don't have to maintain. Some relationships we do have to maintain, like small children. We have to deal with that. But I'm just saying, beyond small children and the elderly, anybody else who has the ability to make choices, because free will is one of the most amazing gifts we've been given as humans. If someone refuses to acknowledge you're telling them that you're struggling with something that's happening in your relationship dynamic, it might be time for you to decide that you need to put them in timeout first. And if a timeout doesn't work, then that's when you can start planning your exit. And that's my final thoughts about, hey, it's spring cleaning for toxic people and toxic behaviors. All right, we're on the back end of the show. It's time to bring back on Miriam.
Hi.
Welcome back.
That was so good. My brother, so I always take off my headphones and then put on the speakers just to like sit back and listen to you. And my brother walked by and he was going to, oh, there's my cat. He was going to go get food and he like stopped and he sat down. He was like, oh, wow. Because he just had a situation recently where the person in his life cut him off completely because that person didn't want to hear what he had to say. And I told him that his relationship was built off of telling that person what they wanted to hear. And the one time you're not going to tell them that is when they're going to cut you off because they've done it in the past. And so he sat down, he was like, oh my gosh, tell Maya that she stopped me from getting lunch because I needed to hear that. And I was like, I will, because it was good.
You know what? Tell him it was food.
Yeah.
For the mind and the soul.
Yeah, exactly.
And that, you know what? And sometimes we need to feed ourselves more that way. Or sometimes you just need to hear somebody else give you that outside perspective.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, so I'm not wrong in how I feel.
Yeah.
It's justified. So,
yeah.
All right. So we haven't done a cover in a while. So we're doing Meet Me in the Hallway by Harry Styles.
Yes. So hopefully this sounds good.
Well, it's been a while since we've heard you live, so I'm kind of excited about this.
Yeah,
So.
me too.
All right, everybody, here is Miriam McQueen, the M.A.Y.A musical muse, singing Meet Me in the Hallway, which is a song by Harry Styles. All right, The floor is yours.
All right. Meet me in the hallway. Meet me in the hallway. I just left the bedroom. Give me some morphine. Is there any more to do? Just let me know. I'll be at the door. Hoping you'll come around. Just let me know. I'll be on the floor. Maybe we'll work this out. I gotta get better. And maybe we'll work this out. I've walked the streets all day. Running with the thief. Cause you left me in the hallway. Give me some more. Take the pain away. Just let me know. I'll be at the door. Hoping you'll come around. Just let me know. I'll be on the floor. Maybe we'll work this out. I gotta get better. And maybe we'll work this out. We don't talk about it. It's something we don't do. Cause once you go without it, Nothing else will do.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Harry Styles, I think, is kind of one of those quietly really talented individuals.
Oh, I love him.
And I think people are more focused on his wardrobe choices right now.
Yeah. I'm like, get over it, guys.
Which is
Jeez,
it's a little different, but that's his flavor. That's his thing.
Yeah.
But he's really very talented. He really is. So, yes. Well, thank you for sharing that. And then, in a way, I still feel like it tied into the theme about opening the door to somebody to receive you and to accept. It's like, here's the invitation. And really about dealing with toxic people and situations is before you write someone off, you extend the invitation to them to say, is this something we can fix?
Yeah.
But if you can't meet me at least halfway, or if we can't find that place in the middle to meet, then that's when the hard decisions come in.
Yeah.
I know.
That happens more often than not.
It does. And then you hear people say things like, that was the one that got away.
Yeah.
After they gain some emotional intelligence down the road.
Yeah.
Just tell your brother.
Like, don't worry.
Don't worry.
All
right. All right. Well, that was fantastic. Thank you. We'll obviously see you next week, and we'll see what's different next week when you come on.
Yes. Probably a different color of hair.
And I'm glad to see that you survived the snowstorm in Colorado.
Yes, I did.
When I heard how bad it was, I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
We got stuck. Our cars got stuck multiple times. So,
Yeah. Well, I am glad that you guys survived it. And, everybody was safe. Okay. I will see you next week.
Bye, Maya.
Bye-bye. Everybody, that is Miriam McQueen. She is the M.A.Y.A Musical Muse. Make sure you follow Miriam on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. It's pretty straightforward. It's Miriam McQueen. Visit her website, miriammcqueen.com. Download, support independent artists, her music. You can find her on iTunes, Google, Spotify, all those places that you can get music. You can find Miriam. So make sure you check out her music there. Well, this is it for the show. That's it. Episode 33. We talked about doing that emotional and mental cleanse, removing toxic people and situations from your life. And hopefully you had some takeaway as well. If you were a first-time listener, I hope you enjoyed the journey. You can now unbuckle and take a deep breath. And of course, if you are a returning listener or viewer, well, guess what? You're used to this ride. So you know what? You can say until next time. So thank you to everybody for tuning into this episode. As I said, the whole purpose of M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, is to help you identify that ambition that you have and how to harness that motivation to get to that best everyday version of yourself, finding that happiness. It can seem like such a really complicated thing to do, but hopefully we're breaking it down in small pieces for you, and you're able to kind of process it and work through it in a way that works for you. So remember, you can always find episodes of M.A.Y.A at MayaAkai.com. Remember, there's going to be some supporting information I'll put on the website. Just go to MayaAkai.com, the podcast resource section, and there'll be some supporting information there for episode 33. I think might be an interesting kind of thing read for you as well. Hopefully by now you have subscribed to my YouTube channel. These are the call to action. So M.A.Y.A, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, or make sure you subscribe to me on my podcast platforms I'm on. I'm on iTunes, Google, Spotify, Amazon Audibles, all those. So just click that subscribe button as well and support me there as well. As always, as I say, remember, your present becomes your past and your future is no more. So make sure you live every single day to the fullest. And hopefully by now that means something to people when I say it. All right, everybody, until next time, be safe, be well, and stay blessed.
Get inspired, get motivated with M.A.Y.A and the M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition podcast.
Something that I take pride in is trying to be forward-thinking, thinking outside the box, challenging myself. And as I challenge myself, hopefully I challenge you.
Find M.A.Y.A on Twitter and Instagram at M.A.Y.A_Akai. On Facebook at M.A.Y.A Akai Presents.
We're going to talk health, wealth, fitness, mental health, financial, lots of different things that can empower you as you seek out the ambition that you're pursuing.
Or get everything M.A.Y.A at MayaAkai.com.